The mounting bracket for the top mic on this Canon XA20 camcorder is fairly typical for the genre. Obviously, the idea of this microphone on top of the camcorder is to pick up and record whatever ambient sound is happening in front of the camcorder, the sound you want. Now, the unfortunate thing about any microphone on a camcorder is that it will also pick up the sounds that your hands make while they are operating the camcorder. For example, as you tap the zoom control, there will be a small but audible tapping sound generated by your hand, and perhaps as you reach for the focusing ring, there will be a little rubbing sound there, my hand rubbing against the body of the camcorder. But in addition to those audible sounds, if you like, there will also be a certain mechanical vibration that is still picked up by the microphone, because as you tap the camcorder body, there is not only the tap, tap, tap sound that you can hear, but in tapping the body, you are sending a vibration through the body of the camcorder, which the capsule in the microphone can pick up, and it can record that as an unwanted thumping, bumping noise, and obviously you don't want that. So, what the camcorder manufacturers do, fairly typically like this, is they put some isolation between the microphone and the camcorder. Now I'll wiggle this so you can see that between the metal of the camcorder body and the metal of the bracket, there is here some rubber so that this is mounted flexibly. So as you bang the camcorder, in theory, the microphone is isolated from it. There is additional rubber mounting in here between the microphone body and, again, the bracket of the microphone itself. And generally speaking, that is typical of the kind of mounting bracket you would have on these kind of top mics. Now, Rycote, the company which is very famous for making these wind jammers, thinks that they can do a better job of this bracket, so they have invented this. They're calling it the Softie Lyre Mount, and they're taking their Lyre technology, which was patented and I think first came out a few years ago, and it's a microphone bracket in a sort of flexible plastic mounting that promises, they say, to give you a sort of better isolation of that microphone from the camcorder body. And what is more, and I don't know if you can see it from the picture here, the Lyre microphone mount is actually itself on a flexible and adjustable bracket. Let's get it out the packet and show you. So just open it up here, and there's not a lot in the box. It is quite literally the bracket and some screws, because certainly on this Canon, this microphone bracket is held on with 2 screws. The idea is that this is a simple screw-on replacement for it, and it comes with a couple of screws in case those ones don't fit. So bear with me while I unscrew this one and then screw this one on in its place. Now, just before I mount it, here is the bracket. You can see that you've got the Lyre suspension, which is this very flexible, and there's 2 sides of it, very flexible, I call it plastic, it is some type of polymer plastic, I'm not exactly sure what. And then in the middle here is a clamp that's sort of spring-loaded to go around your microphone. And then you've got this adjustable, you can unscrew this and change the angle of that bracket, and also unscrew under here, bring it a bit closer, and you can change the angle of that bracket as well. So it's a very flexible solution for mounting the microphone onto the camcorder, compared to the one that sort of came with it, which is just that and holds the microphone in one fixed place. So let's get those screws and try mounting this on. Now, I haven't actually tried this before. Right, that's just about mounted. Now, it was actually very fiddly to do that, because effectively, because Rycote have tried to make this quite flexible for a variety of camcorders, what they've done is they've left plenty of space on the plastic so that screws can be fitted at different widths apart and different lengths of screw, and they do supply about, I think it's 2, 4, 6 screws of different lengths and thicknesses for different camcorder mounts, but it does make it slightly fiddly to actually get them in, because they keep trying to move along the slot. However, there it is, mounted to the top of the camcorder. Now obviously as it's mounted at the moment the microphone will be pointing at a rather peculiar angle, but that is where all these sort of bolts and adjusters come in, because if we turn this one, come on, unscrew, there we go, a little bit tight because it's never been used before, we can obviously turn that around, and if you want to you can have the microphone sort of pointing out from here, but normally of course you'd have it vertically, and you can then tighten that up. And this one alters as well, so if you really want to you can slightly point your microphone down towards your subject or point it into the sky. I don't know why I'd want to do that, but it does give you an immense amount of flexibility. So let's just go with the traditional microphone mount. You'll notice that this mount is actually slightly further back than it would have been with the Canon mount, so that will mean that hopefully the microphone will have less of a propensity to creep into the edge of your shot. So let's just take my microphone and put it into the mount. This is where it's done with a little bit of brute force. There we go. That's now held securely, and obviously that would go back into whichever XLR jack you want it into. And hopefully you can see that because of this very flexible mounting here, the microphone now in theory is more isolated from the camcorder. I'll just turn it around and you can see it from that angle as well. And you'll notice that for a start we no longer have the rubber junction between the bracket and the camcorder anymore, but in theory this flexible plastic mounting here that the microphone is now mounted in should be flexible enough and bouncy enough and wiggly enough that it properly isolates that microphone now from any handling noise that you might induce into the camcorder itself, whether by pressing the buttons or whatever it is you're doing to it. Obviously it's still going to pick up that audible noise. If you tap the camcorder, the microphone is still going to pick up that tap, but it should be isolated from the mechanical vibration. That's what this mount is all about, as well as giving you the flexibility should you want to turn it around and mount it in different ways. If I unscrew that one, it doesn't really work terribly well with the Canon because the XLR plugs stick out that way, but in theory you can, you know, turn your microphone around, and if supposing you wanted to use the top mic, for example, to record your interviewer's questions standing next to the camera while the interviewee was on a separate microphone into the other XR, you could, I suppose, turn it around and point it at your interviewer like that, which is a trick I have done occasionally when filming interviews. If I haven't got a convenient second microphone for the interviewer, just use the camera top mic. The other point to note, which I mentioned a moment ago, is that because of the way this bracket is set up, it is mounted further back than the microphone would be if it were on the original Canon. So you can see obviously the end of the lens hood here, and the microphone is higher up and further back, so it shouldn't be creeping into shot. Even if you had the fluffy windjammer on it, it should be well out of shot. So that's another good reason, I suppose, to have a bigger, more distant mounting bracket than the one that comes as standard. And that applies to many camcorders. It's not a particular fault of the Canons. You get it on a lot of these camcorders that as soon as you put a microphone on top, they stick out here, and when you're fully wide you just get a tiny bit of either the microphone or the windjammer creeping into the top right of your shot. So a bracket that's further away is a good idea. Now, just before we actually run a test, one final quick thing to do is run the cable through these little clips here, which again act as an additional method of isolation. By forcing the cable to go in this little pattern here, it puts a bit of tension on the cable and again prevents any stray vibration being passed up from the camcorder through the cable to the back of the microphone, and this just sort of holds it taut and isolates the microphone again from any wobbles or wiggles coming up through the microphone cable. Now, the first test is whether, with the new microphone mount holding the microphone further away from the camera body, will that reduce the amount of noise that the microphone picks up from the electromechanical noise of the lens moving, such as, for example, when you use the zoom controls to zoom in. There's normally a very slight hum you get from the motor, and obviously the further away the microphone is, the less of that noise it should pick up. So let's just hear if it can indeed hear the motor as I zoom in and out a couple of times. That was one zoom in and one zoom out. I'll do it a couple more times. And now let's compare that to how much of the motor noise the microphone picks up on the original Canon mount. So, zooming in. And now the next test is whether the microphone is going to pick up any handling noise from me holding the camcorder as I might in a typical shoot. And let's pretend that I was walking somewhere particularly bumpy. Try that as if I was hand holding it. And we'll give it a bit of a violent shake, which is unrealistic, but and now let's try all that with the original microphone mount. We've done a lot of tests on the Rycote Softie Lyre Mount and we like it. It does exactly what it says on the tin. It reduces the amount of handling noise that the camcorder's microphone will pick up. It also reduces the amount of electrical motor noise that the microphone picks up. And by virtue of mounting the microphone further up and away from the lens, it reduces that slight possibility of the edge of the microphone, perhaps covered with a fur windshield, from creeping into shot. So although it does rather bulk up the camcorder, particularly in the case of small ones like the Canon XA20 we were using for this demo, it does seem that if you care about your quality audio, this is something you might want to purchase. It may not be the sexiest of products, but it does do a good job. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, please give it a like and maybe consider subscribing to the channel as well. Bye bye.